Cypress trees and cinnamon smoke. You don't walk into the Ottoman palace garden. You dissolve into it. There's no gate with brass hinges, no trumpet of welcome, no guard raising a hand to stop or salute. There's just a narrowing of the marble corridor, a quiet shift in the air. And then, green. Silent. Patient. Green. The kind that doesn't demand your attention but expects it anyway. Your first step onto the path is tentative, like entering a library that's older than your country. The soles of your borrowed slippers, green silk, stitched tight by someone who has never spoken your name, make no sound. Or if they do, it is the sound of dust agreeing to stay asleep. The stones beneath your feet are smooth, rounded with wear. Faint blue tiles weave through them like forgotten constellations, the kind that only reveal themselves when no one is looking directly. Someone laid these tiles 500 years ago. Someone else rearranged them last spring because they didn't like the symmetry. Above you, the cypress trees stand in a neat row, tall, motionless, disapproving. They don't bend. They don't dance. They simply rise. Their roots grow deep and undramatic. These trees don't bloom. They don't drop petals. They don't beg for poetry. They just persist. Which, in a place like this, is the highest compliment. Somewhere behind them, you hear a breeze teasing its way through a lattice of grapevines. It doesn't reach you. It's not your breeze yet. It belongs to someone sitting further inside, someone important, someone you're not here to disturb. The air carries a scent, not perfume, not food, but the in-between. There's cinnamon, faint and sharp, and something darker, burnt clove, maybe, or the shadow of a fruit that was dried too long and steeped in a tea ceremony nobody talks about. The source reveals itself only when you step beneath the fig tree, a small bronze brazier, blackened around the rim, attended by a boy no older than 13. He kneels beside it with a wooden fan, coaxing the coals without touching them. His sleeves are rolled to the elbow, his hands are stained with ash. He doesn't speak. You don't either. You both understand the rule of the garden. Don't break the silence unless the silence speaks first. Somewhere nearby, a fountain breathes. Not a splash, not a gurgle, just the low repetition of water returning to where it came from. You follow the path, not out of decision, but because it curves. And when things in this garden curve, you follow. The hedge to your left rises just above eye level. Somewhere behind it, 2 women speak in soft Turkish. Their voices are gentle, clipped, and polite in the way only dangerous people can manage. One of them laughs, not the full kind of laugh, but the kind that smiles with its mouth closed. You hear the word tulip again. This is the second time. Once is coincidence, twice is fashion. 3 times would mean a crisis. You keep walking. The garden opens slightly now, not a courtyard exactly, but a resting space between 2 shadows. An old bench waits beneath a palm-fringed arbor. It's stone, carved with delicate lines that were clearly meant to resemble vines, though time has made them look more like rain. You don't sit. Not yet. That bench is holding someone else's memory, and it would be rude to sit on it uninvited. There's movement ahead, not footsteps, but robes, soft layered fabric brushing against gravel with the hesitance of silk that's used to better surfaces. A man appears around the corner, middle-aged, careful beard, rings on 3 fingers. He holds a glass teacup without a saucer. There is nothing hurried about him, not his walk, not his glance, not the way he adjusts his robe even though it didn't need adjusting. He nods to you. You return the nod. In the palace, there is no small gesture. A nod is a chapter. You pass beneath an arch. Its top is etched with Arabic script, so finely cut you think it might blow away in the wind if you breathed too hard. The words are Quranic, but the calligraphy is decorative now. No one reads in the garden. They remember instead. A second scent joins the air, rosemary this time, and the faintest hint of old ink. Someone has recently closed a book nearby, not one of poetry, one of records. On your right, a cat lies sleeping on the ledge of a dry well. Not curled, but sprawled, the way only animals without enemies sleep. Its tail flicks once as you pass, acknowledging your presence and your insignificance at once. You reach a wall covered in creeping jasmine. It climbs the stones like it owns them. The flowers are pale, like porcelain. Their scent isn't strong, but constant. Every few steps, it resets the air. Every few breaths, you forget where you were going. A breeze finally finds you. It's soft, and it carries the sound of footsteps you don't recognize. 3 people pass along a raised walkway above, barely visible through the trees. One wears scarlet, one wears gold, one carries a lute. You hear nothing from them. Their silence feels rehearsed. You look up and realize the sun has gone lower. Not hurried, just certain. The sky is now the color of ripe apricot, and the garden absorbs the change without protest. The shadows lengthen, but no one lights a lantern yet. The garden knows its own timing. Light stays just long enough to remember itself. At the end of the path, you find a basin. It's square, carved from dark marble, filled with still water and no visible purpose. A single tulip petal floats at its center, red, slightly curled, and inexplicably perfect. You don't touch it, but you remember it. And that, in this place, is enough. The sound of scissors and jealous eunuchs. The path bends gently to the right, following the logic of a garden designed for neither haste nor straight lines. As you pass under a low arch wrapped in trailing bougainvillea, the sound reaches you before the scene does. Snip. Pause. Snip. Pause again. The rhythm is not hurried. It is measured, reverent, almost ceremonial, like prayer disguised as vanity. You step into a shaded courtyard where the sunlight breaks into fragments. It glints off polished brass, off lacquered stools, off the rim of a silver bowl filled with still water. This is the barber's courtyard. 3 of them work in near silence, moving around their seated clients with the slow, efficient grace of court dancers. Their robes are crisp, their scissors small. One holds a delicate ivory comb in his left hand, guiding a precise line along the edge of a mustache that may or may not be fashionable anymore, depending on who wins the next argument over tea. The courtiers in the chairs wear their confidence like perfume, heavy, expensive, and meant for others to notice. One of them, young and perfectly shaved, is draped in a robe dyed deep indigo. His eyes stay fixed on the hand mirror held by a mute attendant crouched beside him. He studies his reflection not with vanity, but with expectation, as if the mirror owes him a better version of himself. The barber adjusts his angle, lifts the chin slightly, and says nothing. He doesn't need to. In this courtyard, the scissors do the speaking. Snip. A few feet away, beneath the curved shade of a plum tree, a eunuch watches. He's older than the others. His robe is simpler, but perfectly clean. His posture is straight, hands folded inside his sleeves, one foot tapping slowly against the marble tile like a clock that resents being wound. He says nothing, but the way he watches says plenty. This eunuch has seen 4 sultans rise, 2 fall, and 1 quietly fade into the pages of someone else's diary. He has memorized palace schedules down to the minute, including the ones no one writes down. And yet here he stands, uninvited to the chair, invisible to the mirror. His eyes do not rest on the courtiers. They hover on the barber's hands, the way they move, the way they hesitate, the way they flatter with shears. There is a different kind of power in this courtyard. It is the power of knowing who gets trimmed first. Behind him, a small copper table bears 2 glass flasks, rose water and lemon oil. The rose water is half used. The lemon oil untouched. No one wants to smell like lemon this week. Lemon is for novices and accountants. A second eunuch appears at the edge of the courtyard, younger, leaner, holding a silk pouch of hairpins and perfumed powder. He makes no announcement. He simply sets the pouch down near the stools and steps back into the shade, where his presence dissolves like sugar in warm tea. The barbers do not look up. They already knew he was coming. They always do. The indigo-robed courtier finally speaks, not to his barber, but to the mirror.
Too much off the sides and I'll look like a Persian.
The barber pauses. Which century? He asks softly. The young man almost smiles. Almost. A third courtier, this one wrapped in gold-threaded silk, snorts gently from the next chair over. He pretends to read a poetry scroll that's clearly upside down. No one mentions it. A breeze slips into the courtyard then, light and unexpected. It rustles a few trimmed hairs on the tile floor. The scent of roasted almonds and soapstone drifts in from somewhere off stage, probably the hammam, which, according to rumor, just reopened after someone found a misplaced emerald in the drains. The older eunuch finally moves. He walks a slow circle around the perimeter of the courtyard, arms still folded, eyes still quiet. His steps are soft, but each one feels like punctuation. You get the feeling he's not supervising. He's remembering, measuring, waiting. He stops beside a small bronze mirror hung low on a stone wall. It's meant for the barbers, but he stares into it anyway. For a long time, nothing happens. Then, without turning, he says, "That one always asks for the same haircut, no matter who's in power." The nearest barber doesn't answer. It wasn't a question. The silence resumes, but now it has weight. A cat appears at the courtyard's edge, long-limbed and orange, with one torn ear and a limp that may be faked for sympathy. It slinks past the stools, rubs briefly against the young courtier's chair, then settles beneath the older eunuch's robe without permission. He allows it. Of course he does. There is a moment where everything seems to pause. The breeze stills. The scissors stop. Even the mirror seems to reflect more gently. Then, snip. The sound resumes. Life breathes again. You take one last glance around the courtyard. The glint of blades, the flick of fans, the hush of rank wrapped in silk, and then quietly return to the garden path, leaving behind the careful theater of hair and hierarchy. Somewhere ahead, the peacocks are screaming again. Of course they are. Tulip madness and pet peacock drama. The garden opens wider now, stretching like a well-fed cat, lazy and satisfied under the weight of late afternoon light. You've wandered into a portion known, quietly, and only among staff, as the tulip walk. Not because the flowers are confined here. They appear in other corners too, in vases and silk embroidery and the border of rugs. But here, along this path, the tulips become theatrical. They line the stone walkway on either side, some in neat beds, others spilling deliberately from ceramic pots shaped like flared skirts. The petals aren't just red and yellow. They are streaked, speckled, swirled like marbled ink. One flower looks like it was kissed by fire. Another, like it's blushing from a scandal no one dares name aloud. You stop, because of course you do. A gardener kneels nearby, trimming the leaves of a single plant with scissors so tiny they must have been made by a jeweler. He wears a soft blue robe and a deep, focused frown. Not angry, just deeply preoccupied, like someone cutting hair for a man who hasn't aged in centuries. You clear your throat gently. He doesn't look up. They bruise easily, he says, snipping a leaf with the same reverence a priest might give a page of scripture, especially the striped ones. The Sultan prefers symmetry, but the Dutch sent us chaos. You nod, even though you're not sure what that means. It doesn't matter. Most people here speak in riddles when the tulips are blooming. Further along, a low table has been set beneath an awning of woven reeds. 3 cushions surround it, 2 of them recently vacated. The third still bears the gentle imprint of someone's knees. On the table, a lacquered box overflows with tulip bulbs, neatly arranged like stolen pearls. A single bulb sits apart, resting in a dish of rosewater. It is labeled in fine Ottoman script, Shiraz Pearl. Below that, in smaller handwriting, not for gifting, not for planting, not for losing. That tells you everything. There is a sudden rustling up ahead, a sharp, feathery clatter that breaks the rhythm of silence like dropped porcelain. Then comes the scream, not human, not quite. You turn the corner and see it. 2 peacocks in full imperial plumage, standing off like bored aristocrats at a poorly attended duel. Their tails shimmer in opposing directions, emerald, sapphire, gold, each one waving gently like a flag with better self-esteem than yours. Between them, a third bird, slightly smaller, wholly unimpressed. She was gifted to the harem 3 weeks ago, a voice says beside you. You hadn't noticed her arrive. She's seated beneath a flowering almond tree, a cup of bitter coffee in hand, her robe the color of pomegranate skins. She doesn't introduce herself, because she doesn't have to. The tilt of her head, the stillness of her body, everything about her suggests she's too tired for introductions and too powerful to need them. The peacocks, she adds, have taken her presence personally. The birds scream again. One charges forward, flaring its wings, then retreats at the last moment. The other flutters in place, turning slightly to give the full effect of its tail and profile. The third bird, the hen, begins preening her feathers as though none of this concerns her. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe she knows the rules better than anyone. Do they ever stop? You ask. Only if she chooses, the woman replies, sipping her coffee. Another voice joins the air, soft, amused, slightly nasal. A man in his 40s, finely dressed but missing the arrogance that usually comes with such fabrics. He stands just behind you, holding a bowl of pistachios and watching the peacocks as if they're reciting poetry. They once fought for 6 hours over a ribbon, he says. A blue one, frayed on one end. He pops a pistachio into his mouth and chews slowly. Eventually, he continues, The ribbon was carried off by a breeze. Neither bird spoke to the other for a week. You wonder if he's exaggerating. Then you look at the birds and realize he's probably underselling it. Behind you, a servant sets down a tray of chilled melon slices and quietly disappears again. The woman under the almond tree ignores the food. The man offers you a pistachio. You take one. It tastes like it was grown on a tree that had its own personal lute player. There is movement on the far side of the lawn now. A palace boy approaches carefully with a folded silk fan and a small silver bell. He rings it once, softly, no more than a suggestion, and the birds immediately pause. The hen walks away without looking back. The males deflate, their tails falling like stage curtains. It's over. The boy nods to the woman, who returns the gesture so faintly it might have been a blink. Then she rises and walks off, her robe catching the breeze like it's part of her exit plan. The man finishes his pistachio, wipes his hands on a square of linen, and strolls toward the tulips with no further comment. You're alone now, but the garden doesn't feel empty. It never does. A single peacock feather flutters past your foot. You don't pick it up. Not here. Not in a place where everything is still watching. The hidden door near the lemon trees. You wouldn't notice the door if no one told you where to look. Even after 3 turns through the lemon grove, even after your eyes adjust to the light shift beneath the dense canopy, still, it hides. Set into a moss-dark wall, beneath a twisted arch of flowering citrus, it resembles more a memory than an entrance. And yet, here it is. Old cedar wood, grayed at the edges, with a bronze handle shaped like a lion swallowing a grape. A quiet joke, if you know the palace well enough. The lion is always hungry. And the grapes? They've already been eaten. No guards stand here. No rope or sign. Just the scent of lemons and something faintly medicinal, like a chamber that was once used for healing or confessing. You look over your shoulder, but the garden has turned away politely. So you press the handle. The door does not creak. It sighs, and you step inside. The corridor beyond is narrow, cool, utterly silent. The floor is tiled in alternating ivory and green glass. The pattern appears random at first, until you look too long. Then the design sharpens, like a secret being remembered. The green tiles form a path, not straight, but purposeful. You follow it without knowing why. The air here tastes different. Dry, still, older. It feels less like a hallway and more like a pause. Wall niches hold long-forgotten vases, some cracked, some empty, one still filled with dusted stalks of dried lavender. You brush your fingers gently along the edge of one. The clay is cool, not unfriendly, but not for you. Eventually, the hallway opens into a small octagonal chamber. No windows, just filtered light pouring through tiny cutouts in the dome above. Stars, moons, tulip heads. They cast slow-moving shadows along the floor like drifting coins on water. A table sits at the center. Round, low. Old enough to be furniture and rumor both. There are chairs, but none are pulled out. No scrolls, no food, no signs of recent use. And yet, it smells faintly of mint tea. You're not sure what you were expecting. Whispers? Secrets? A velvet-robed official tapping a map with a golden ring? Instead, you find stillness. And the kind of emptiness that feels deliberate. You circle the room once, slowly. Your footsteps make soft notes on the tile. one for each small crime of curiosity. The walls bear no markings, no mirrors, just a thin horizontal groove running all the way around the room, chest height, like a shelf that forgot how to hold anything. You lean in to inspect the groove. It smells faintly of wax, of smoke, of ink dried long ago. Before you can decide whether to sit or leave, a sound reaches you, soft, padded, approaching. Slippers, not yours. From the hallway behind, a figure appears. Short, careful. Draped in a dusty brown robe with wide sleeves and no ornament. He carries a small, round tray. On it, 2 cups, steam rising. 1 sugar cube resting on a folded napkin, like an offering from someone too polite to guess your mood. He says nothing, just sets the tray on the table, bows slightly, and turns to go. At the doorway, he pauses. "They used to argue here," he says without looking back. "The Grand Vizier and the scribe from Damascus. Every Thursday." He taps the side of the arch with 2 fingers. They'd speak so softly, even the walls forgot what was said. Then he disappears. You sit, not out of obedience, but because it feels like the next line in the script. The tea is strong, bitter, but thoughtful. The kind that wakes the mind gently without asking it to solve anything. The sugar cube stares up at you. You don't take it. The air thickens slightly, as if a memory has just sat beside you. You begin to wonder, what else has happened here? Not just the arguments, but the silences that followed. The glances, the paused breaths, the decisions made not in words, but in who stood up first. On one wall you notice something odd. The groove, which runs unbroken throughout the room, dips slightly here. Not a flaw, a signal. You rise and press your palm gently to that section. The stone is warmer than it should be. There's a click, and the panel shifts inward by an inch. Behind it, not a passage, not a tunnel, just a recess. Shallow, hidden, empty, but for one object. A fan, silk, black, trimmed in gold thread, folded, untouched by dust. You don't take it. You don't even unfold it. But you understand something now. This room was not made for debate. It was made for decisions already decided. You return the fan to its resting place, close the panel, and leave the tea unfinished. The hallway receives you with its usual silence. You follow the green tile path backward, the shadows lengthening behind you. The lemon scent returns slowly, like an old rumor catching up. When you step back into the garden, the sun has dipped lower. The air is thicker now. Someone is burning sandalwood nearby, and the smell wraps around your shoulders like a shawl. The door closes behind you without a sound, as if it was never there at all. The man who waters the roses but speaks to no one. You notice him long before he notices you, if he notices you at all. He is kneeling in the dust beneath a rose trellis, one hand resting on a rusted copper watering can, the other gently cupping a blossom so pink it seems embarrassed to be blooming at all. His robe is pale, the color of boiled linen left too long in the sun. His feet are bare. His eyes are lowered. The roses here are different. They don't grow in tidy beds or ceremonial rows. They wander. They reach and tangle and sulk. They burst from odd corners, lean across pathways, sneak into fig branches as if chasing better conversation. Some bloom defiantly, in clusters too thick for their stems. Others appear alone, singular, their petals curled inwards like the final word of a secret. The man waters them all the same. You pause at the edge of the path and wait, not because of etiquette, but because you don't want to startle him. He moves like someone unused to being seen. He lifts the can, pours slowly. The water doesn't splash. It seeps, patient as honey. Each pour is exact, deliberate, not too much, as though the roots have whispered their preferences to him personally. There's no sound but the faint trickle of water and the birds arguing in a fig tree nearby. Not important birds, small ones, the kind that flutter about Imperial gardens, believing themselves to be part of court. The man finishes one rose and turns to the next. Still, he does not speak. But then, something changes. Without looking up, he says, "They grow better when no one praises them." His voice is dry, flat, not rude, just well used and rarely shared. You blink. He gestures to the far wall of roses. Those were complimented last week. They haven't bloomed since. You follow his hand. Sure enough, the bushes to the right are leafy but bare, sulking in full sun. You wonder who praised them. A visiting poet, maybe, or a scribe who mistook restraint for modesty. He dips the can again, this time into a shallow basin carved into the ground. You hadn't noticed it before. The water inside is clear, cool, and still enough to reflect the cypress trees behind you. He continues. The palace prefers tulips. They come up quickly. They dazzle. Then, they die. His tone doesn't change. It isn't bitterness. It's just fact. You crouch slightly, careful not to disturb the soil, and glance at the roses near his knee. They are fragrant, wild, full of thorns. One has a split petal that looks like it was repaired with thread. He notices your stare. "Broken by a prince," he says. He tried to pin it to a poem. The poem didn't survive either. You smile. "Do you have a favorite?" you ask. He thinks about it. Or maybe he just breathes differently. "This one," he says at last, pointing to a short, scruffy rose bush with only 3 flowers. Ugly, mean, smells like tobacco, but it returns every year. No fuss, no demand. He touches one of its blossoms with the back of his finger. Like a servant who refuses to die. You sit now, gently, cross-legged on the stone. There's something sacred in the way he tends to them, not religious, but rhythmic, like music for roots. He waters, waits, moves, waters again. You realize he has a system. The watering can empties, but he doesn't refill it yet. He simply sets it aside and begins checking the leaves. Not just for pests, but for posture. He straightens stems, clears away curled foliage, murmurs something to a bud too small to hear. At last he speaks again. "You think the palace is ruled by the vizier, or the eunuchs, or the woman with the peacocks." A pause. "But it's the ones who know how to wait." You glance up. "The roses?" you ask. He doesn't smile, but his eyes do something close to it. "No, the gardeners." There is a moment of wind then. Brief, low, full of jasmine and old paper. And then, from somewhere behind you, a bell rings once. Faint, not urgent. The man stands slowly, picks up the watering can, walks to the basin, fills it again. He moves as if the years have weighted his joints like ceremonial gold. You watch him work in silence for another long stretch. Then he says, "You should go." Not unkindly, just firmly. You stand. He's already kneeling again, his back turned, whispering to another flower that probably isn't listening. You hesitate. "Is there a name?" you ask. "For this garden?" He doesn't look up. "No," he replies. If it had one, someone would try to own it. You walk back to the path slowly. Behind you, the sound of watering resumes, soft, steady, forgiving. The roses do not speak, but they seem a little fuller than before. The windows that listen at nightfall. The path narrows again, but this time it doesn't lead through trees or tulips or roses. It leads towards stone. Quiet, pale stone, gently warmed by the sun, and now slowly surrendering its heat to the cooling dusk. You've arrived at the western wing of the palace, the part no one calls important, but everyone passes through when they think no one's watching. The wall here is long and smooth, broken only by a rhythm of tall, narrow windows. Each one is shuttered with intricate latticework, carved so finely it seems like breath alone could shatter it. These are not the windows that open. These are the windows that listen. They begin where the day ends, facing west, toward the slope of the garden and the fading line of sun. Behind each one is a room with no throne, no map, no scribe, just cushions, lamps, and the occasional voice speaking too quietly for the air to carry. The shadows here are soft but honest. They do not hide. They suggest. You pause near the third window. It's slightly taller than the others, its lattice carved in the shape of layered pomegranate seeds. Inside, you hear not a voice, but a sigh. Long, thoughtful, followed by the sound of fingers tapping softly on a wooden table. Someone is waiting for an answer they already know won't come. You move along. The sixth window is silent, utterly. As if silence itself lives there now. No footsteps, no shifting of robes, but the scent of candle smoke is fresh. Someone left recently. Perhaps they said too much. Perhaps they finally said nothing at all. You don't try to look inside. That's not how these windows work. They offer nothing back. No reflection, no warmth, just the faintest sense that somehow you are the one being studied. You stop again near the ninth. This one hums. Not a tune, not a voice, but a low, steady rhythm, like fabric being embroidered or paper being folded and refolded by hands that can no longer write. The smell of ink hangs in the air here, sharp and old, mixed with something else, cardamom, perhaps, or the last breath of old tea. You place your hand lightly on the wall beneath the window. It's cool now, cooling fast. And just then you hear it. Did he mention the river? The voice is female, calm, not young, not old. Another voice replies, dry as a reed. He pretends not to remember. A silence. Then we must remember more loudly. You step back instinctively, not from fear, from the intimacy of it. A breeze lifts the hem of your robe. It carries the smell of dust, of jasmine, of smoke. The garden behind you rustles in agreement. Somewhere far off, a prayer call echoes faintly across the rooftops, distorted by tiles and time. It's not quite the hour, but it's close enough to hush even the doves. You continue. The final window, 13th in the line, is slightly cracked open. Not the shutters, but the wooden frame itself. Just a sliver. Enough for a thread of lamplight to spill across the stone. Someone, it seems, forgot to close it all the way. Or perhaps someone wanted to be heard. You kneel slowly, respectfully, not to spy, just to be near.
From inside comes the sound of pages turning, carefully. Not because the pages are fragile, but because the reader knows too much to rush.
A soft cough. Then a single phrase, "If they knew what the glass knew." And nothing more. You rise. Behind you, the sky has shifted to velvet. Not quite night, not quite day. That in-between state where everything you see feels like it's being remembered, not lived. The windows begin to fade from view as the garden deepens into shadow. You glance back once, expecting, hoping to see someone watching from behind the lattice. But of course, the glass never shows. It only listens. And tonight, it has listened enough. You return to the path. The stones are cooler now beneath your feet. The lights along the outer wall begin to flicker into life. Small oil lanterns in shallow alcoves, flickering like fireflies that never learned to fly. Somewhere a wooden gate creaks open, then closes again, quietly, as though it forgot what it was waiting for. Coffee with the palace astrologer. The path forks quietly now, splitting not with grandeur but with a shrug. To the left, more garden, denser, darker, filled with night blooms and the scent of citron. To the right, a modest terrace, stone steps worn smooth by sandals and secrets. You take the right, because someone left a trail of scent, not signs. Bitter coffee, ground fine, brewed slow. The kind that wakes the soul but doesn't rush the body. You follow it. The terrace isn't large. 3 cushions, a low copper table, and a view that forgets to impress. No domes, no distant minarets. Just the sloping back of the outer garden wall and the silhouette of a fig tree leaning in like it knows a story you're not ready to hear. And there, on the center cushion, sits the astrologer.
You knew it was him before you saw the charts.
His robe is plum-colored, frayed at the hem. His beard is trimmed by neglect, not design. His feet are bare. His eyes? Always aimed 1 inch above whatever he's supposed to be looking at. He doesn't greet you. He gestures at the other cushion with the indifference of a man who's predicted you were coming but didn't find it particularly interesting. You sit. He pours the coffee. No ceremony, no tray, just a cracked white porcelain pot and 2 mismatched cups, one chipped at the rim, the other too smooth to have survived this many years honestly. He drinks first, then finally speaks. Venus has moved. She's sulking again. You wait. He glances sideways at you. You don't care. You shake your head. He sips again. Good. Neither does the Sultan. You both sit in silence for a moment, the kind that's too still to be awkward. Somewhere below the terrace, a frog croaks once, then twice, then thinks better of it. The astrologer leans forward and pulls a folded cloth from under the table. He lays it open, not parchment, not silk. Something in between. A map, but not of land. Circles. Arcs. Tiny ink marks that look like ants frozen mid-thought. He taps one point near the bottom. This is Mercury. Right now he's behaving. You lean slightly. He taps again, further out. This, he says, is Jupiter. He's been loud lately. Keeps interrupting. He sighs. Not from frustration, from familiarity. Jupiter talks too much. Mars holds grudges. Saturn watches but says nothing. And Venus, he waves a hand. Dramatic. You nod, because somehow that all makes perfect sense. He refolds the chart. I told a poet last week that his moon was rising. You wait. He hasn't stopped writing since. 8 scrolls, all bad. You sip your coffee. It's strong, laced with cardamom and something sharper. You can't tell if it's clove or prophecy. The astrologer stares at the sky, not the stars yet, just the dimming blue of twilight, as if trying to guess what will arrive before it announces itself. I only predict things for people who already suspect them, he says. It saves everyone time. You ask him if he's ever been wrong. He chuckles. Wrong? No. Misunderstood? Constantly. Another sip. Once I told a concubine that her fate lay in her own hands. He pauses. She tried to strangle a vizier that evening, with both hands. You nearly choke on your coffee. She failed, he adds. Wrong vizier. The silence returns, but this time it wears a robe of familiarity. You glance at the chipped cup. He notices. That belonged to a dream interpreter. He drank too much, then dreamed about spilling it. You smile. Did he? The astrologer shrugs. Who knows? He disappeared. Claimed a cloud told him to live in a tree. You set your cup down. Above, the first stars are beginning to show, one by one. Timid, like dancers waiting for the music to begin. The astrologer doesn't look up. He says, most people come here hoping I'll tell them something dramatic, that their fate is a storm, or a rebellion, or a secret child. And? He refills your cup. I tell them their fate is probably dinner, and a quiet argument about poetry. You sip again. It tastes warmer now. Or maybe you're just listening better. Sometimes, he continues, the sky says nothing. It just watches. And that, he says, finishing his cup, is when you must be most careful. A moth lands gently on the table between you. Neither of you move. I once read the stars for a general, he says. Told him a war would end in 6 days. Did it? You ask. No, but he surrendered on the 6th day, saved thousands. He smiles. People don't realize that's all I do. Offer permission for decisions they're already afraid to make. He stands now, stretching slightly. The folds of his robe sigh. He gathers the cloth chart, the pot, the cups, leaving behind only the cushion and the scent of spice and ash. Before disappearing behind the fig tree, he says, tonight, Mars is quiet, and Venus is asleep. It's a good night to forget what you were worrying about. Then he's gone, and the stars, overhead, begin their silent performance. Not loud, not urgent, just present. You finish your coffee. It's cold now, but you don't mind. Where the lamps burn without flame, you descend a shallow flight of marble steps that curves like a question mark. No guards stand here. No signs explain where you're going. But the air shifts, slightly cooler, with a dryness that tastes faintly of parchment and metal. You're in the lower east wing now, beneath the library, though few call it that anymore. They call it the lamp hall, or, if they're superstitious, the place of the lights that don't go out. No one's entirely sure who lights the lamps, or if they were ever lit at all. The first chamber opens slowly. No doors, Just a curved arch lined with carved patterns that look like script, but aren't. Symbols, maybe. Or memories of alphabets no longer used. The walls here are bare. No scrolls, no shelves, just the lamps. They hover. Each one is suspended by a chain so thin it vanishes into the ceiling. The bowls themselves are bronze or glass, some frosted, some darkened with age, but all glowing faintly from within. No fire, no wick. Just light, warm, constant, unexplained. You step carefully across the stone floor. The tiles are uneven, as if the earth beneath them has forgotten how to hold its shape. Your footsteps echo gently, like someone whispering back everything you've just thought. There are no voices here, not even your own. A young servant walks past you, barefoot, holding a tray with a folded cloth and a tiny brass spoon. He doesn't speak, doesn't even glance up. He moves like someone in a trance. You wonder if he hears anything at all. In the second chamber, the lamps hang lower, almost at head height. Some of them pulse, barely, not like breathing, more like remembering. Each lamp has something written on its base, not labels, not names, just entries, phrases, fragments. One reads, "She did not speak, but her silence made the prince change his will." Another, "The cup shattered before the poison reached his lips." And another, smaller and duller, "The eunuch with the scar knew but said nothing. He always said nothing." You begin to wonder, are these records? Not events, but consequences. The light here isn't just illumination, it's witness. You enter the third and final chamber, deeper and colder. Here, the lamps don't glow, they shimmer, a subtle difference, like light turned inward. Here, they reflect without revealing. This chamber is smaller, round. Only 7 lamps hang here. Each one carries a single phrase, burned in by some method you can't identify. A secret whispered through 3 walls is still a secret. He kissed the ring, but not the hand. The ink was dry before the message was read. Nothing grew in that soil again. No one else is here. But something remains. You sit, slowly, on a low stone bench along the wall. Your back finds the cool comfort of old marble. Your breath echoes slightly, like the room is listening. And then you feel it. A warmth, just above your left shoulder. One of the lamps is glowing brighter, not urgently, not threateningly, just noticing. You turn. It bears a new line. It wasn't there before. He stayed longer than anyone expected. You stare at it for a long moment, then rise and leave without a word. Back through the shimmered corridor, past the pulsing chamber, through the silent arch with not quite script, into the garden, where night has settled fully now. The stars are out. The frogs have stopped arguing. And above the hallway you just left, a breeze stirs the jasmine vines, soft but certain. Somewhere deep below, 7 lamps shimmer quietly. And somewhere even deeper, a story decides it's not done yet. The Sultan's slippers were always too small. You hear him before you see him. But not in the way you expect. No trumpets, no shouted titles, no procession of robes or waving fans. Just a slight scuffing sound. Soft, regular, left, right, pause. as if someone walking with dignity was being betrayed, subtly, by his shoes. You are near the pavilion of Morningshade now. A quiet place. White marble roof, blue glazed tile. The calligraphy above the arch reads, "He who rules listens first to silence." Inside, cushions, low stools, a table always set for tea but never touched, and a single pair of slippers waiting by the entrance. They are always there. Small, too small. You remember what someone whispered days ago beneath a fig tree. "The Sultan's slippers don't fit because they aren't his." And someone else had replied, "He had the cobbler executed, so now no one measures his feet." The truth? Well, the palace prefers truths to be comfortable, not correct. You sit quietly near the corner of the pavilion. You are not alone. 2 scribes wait, ink pens tucked into their sleeves. One is sketching a tulip. The other is pretending to read but watching the door. The sound grows nearer. Scuff. Scuff. Pause. And then he enters. The Sultan. He is younger than his silence suggests. Dressed in a robe of pale gold and worn velvet, a ring on each hand. No crown, no flourish. But it is the slippers you notice first. Soft red leather, embroidered with green thread, curling slightly at the toes. They squeeze his feet. Not obviously, not comically, just enough to force his walk into a rhythm of hesitation. Everyone notices. No one comments. He seats himself without ceremony, lowering gently onto the cushion, as though every movement has been pre-approved by centuries of cautious ancestors. "Which scroll did the barber send?" he asks, voice flat and clear. The older scribe produces a thin roll of parchment and places it on the table. The Sultan unrolls it slowly. He reads in silence. Then he sighs. "Too many metaphors," he mutters, and he still can't spell neck. He tosses the scroll aside. It lands near the tulip sketch, which neither scribe bothers to finish now. You study his face. He looks like someone who's only ever been told what he already suspects. He stands again. This time you hear it clearly. A faint creak of skin against leather. The right slipper, slightly tighter than the left. He walks to the far end of the pavilion and gazes out through the lattice. The view is nothing special, just a strip of gravel and 2 potted pines. But he stares like it's a window into rebellion. Then he speaks. "When I was a boy, they told me rulers must be taller than fear." He turns. "But every time I enter a room, I think only of these slippers." He smiles. It's not a warm smile. It's a habit dressed as an expression. "One day, I asked the tailor why they pinch. He said it was symbolic, that they remind me not to run." You raise an eyebrow. "And do they?" The Sultan nods. "They do. I dream of running, and wake up limping." The younger scribe clears his throat, perhaps to shift the mood. "Shall I call the cobbler, my lord?" The Sultan waves him off. "There hasn't been a palace cobbler since the incident with the prince's boots." No one asks what that incident was. He walks back to his cushion, sits, this time more slowly. "The thing is," he says, almost to himself, "power wants to appear still, but it fidgets. It tightens. It rubs raw." He lifts one foot, removes the slipper. His bare foot is pale, marked by a faint red band across the arch. He places the slipper beside him, then removes the other. For the first time, he breathes fully. Not like a ruler. like a man allowed to unbutton his inheritance. Then he leans back and closes his eyes. No orders, no requests, just rest. One of the scribes rises, retrieves a folded linen cloth, and gently places it over the slippers. The Sultan doesn't move. He doesn't need to. This, you realize, is what true authority looks like in its quietest form. Not in robes, not in gold, but in the decision to walk uncomfortably, because to stop would invite questions. You rise, as if drawn by some shared understanding, and leave the pavilion. Outside, the breeze has shifted. A jasmine petal lands on the toe of your own shoe. You bend down and flick it away. And for a moment, you think about walking barefoot, too. What the laundry knows that the court does not. It's barely marked on the palace maps. A low hall behind the kitchens, tucked between the bakery and a forgotten tool room. No guards, no calligraphy, just a curtain of thick linen pushed aside by busy hands. But if you follow the steam, the warm, sweet-smelling air thick with rosewater, starch, and old breath, you'll find it. The laundry. Not the washing place the servants use. Not the shallow marble basin where bathrobes soak. This is the royal laundry, where linen and velvet come to be unburdened. The room is long and quiet, hot. The windows, high and narrow, let in just enough light to keep the corners from dreaming too much. Large copper cauldrons line the wall, each steaming like a disappointed grandmother. Ironing stones rest on thick wooden tables, and long ropes hang from the ceiling, dripping with damp silk. You step inside and are ignored completely. That's how you know it's serious. 3 women and 1 man move around the space, folding, boiling, brushing, pressing. They speak in gestures, in brief clicks of the tongue, in soft hums that shift depending on the robe they're handling. Near the center stands a woman in a plum headscarf. Her sleeves are rolled up to the elbow. Her hands are stained with rose dye, and she is carefully scrubbing a sash that once belonged to a vizier. She looks up once, meets your gaze, then glances at your shoes, then returns to scrubbing. That, in laundry language, means, "Speak if you must, but I already know too much." You move closer to the racks where folded garments are stacked in quiet piles. The Grand Steward's prayer robe, worn thin at the knees. The High Eunuch's cloak, one side more faded than the other. A silk scarf that smells faintly of clove and ink, from the poet likely. Each tells a story, not in embroidery, in wear. Sheer places where fingers clutched too long. Burn marks where letters were read too near a lamp. A tear at the collar from someone who couldn't wait to remove it. The plum-scarved woman finally speaks. The prince has been sleeping in the wrong bed again. You look up. You hadn't asked. She wasn't offering. She continues, rubbing salt into a golden sash. His robe smells of lavender. His wife wears myrrh. So, you don't interrupt. She drops the sash into a basin of vinegar and mint and moves to a new pile. This time, towels. They keep asking us not to use sandalwood on the bath towels, she says, because the astrologer claims it clouds the mind. She raises an eyebrow. He should try sharing a basin with the kitchen boys. That'll cloud your mind. She irons a towel with swift, sharp strokes. The steam rises, and with it, the truth. No one hides anything from the laundry. They just forget that clothes carry memory. She reaches for a red velvet robe with gold piping, stops, runs a finger along the inside hem, holds it up to the light. Ah, she says. You see it now. A smear, pale, grayish brown, smudged in 2 places. Dust from the archives, she murmurs. But this robe hasn't been assigned to the archives in weeks. She folds it slowly. Someone's looking for something, and not where they're supposed to. She places the robe on a separate shelf. That shelf isn't labeled. It doesn't need to be. It's for garments that have whispered too much. You move on. Near the cauldrons, the man, tall, quiet, with sleeves rolled to his shoulders, stirs a bubbling mixture with a wooden stick nearly as tall as he is. He doesn't speak, but his face is stained with ash, and his eyes carry that look you've seen in old messengers, always halfway between remembering and forgetting. The cauldron bubbles. From the far end of the room you hear laughter, brief, low, affectionate. A young girl, maybe 12, is folding napkins with perfect creases. They say the Sultan never touches his own handkerchief, she tells no one. But I think he chews on them. She holds one up. This one has teeth marks. The plum-scarved woman calls out, "Don't talk nonsense during the drying cycle." The girl grins. You step toward the window. The steam blurs the glass. You see your reflection, just barely, then lose it. The scent here is strong. Cinnamon, ash, vinegar, rose. Somewhere, a bell rings. No one flinches. It's not their bell. The woman speaks again. Everyone thinks the court runs on scrolls and favors, but it runs on cloth. She picks up a small tunic, child-sized, stained at the cuff. This belonged to a concubine's son. He fell in the lily pond last month. She shows you the stain. Grass, clay, dried sugar. He said he slipped. We know he was pushed. She folds it carefully, places it on the highest shelf, out of reach, out of sight. You step back toward the curtain. The woman doesn't say goodbye. Instead, she says, "If you want the truth, don't ask the poets. Ask the ones who clean their pockets." And just like that, the curtain closes behind you. The hallway outside is colder, cleaner, too clean. You walk on, the scent of starch still clinging to your sleeve. You brush it off. But you know now. It stays longer than you'd like. The garden where no one laughs. After sunset. You reach it just as the last call to prayer fades across the domes. Not late. Not early. That in-between hour when the sky turns neither dark nor blue, but something bruised. It's called the Silent Garden. Not officially. Officially, it's listed in records as the Upper Eastern Court Floral Reserve. But no one calls it that. Because names like laughter don't last here. You step through a narrow arch cut into smooth stone. The arch is carved with vines, but not cheerful ones. These twist downward, and inside you understand why. The garden is stunning. Exquisitely maintained. Too maintained. The hedges are trimmed into perfect curves, unnaturally perfect. The paths of crushed white gravel are spotless, as if swept by invisible brooms. Even the fountains, small and spare, release water with mechanical stillness. No splashing, no murmur, just controlled motion. The flowers bloom in silent rows, white hyacinths, blood-red tulips, one line of pale chrysanthemums, each one opening just slightly more than the one before it. You begin to walk. Your footsteps crunch on the gravel. And that alone makes you feel too loud. In the center of the garden stands a raised stone platform, barely a step off the ground. No inscriptions, no benches, just space. Once, this was a place for poetry readings. Once, this was where the younger court gathered on cool nights to drink pomegranate sherbet and invent clever insults. But not anymore. Now, no one sits there. And no one laughs. Not since the incident. Of course, no two stories agree on what that incident was. Some say a poet insulted the wrong heir. Others say a joke about the Grand Vizier's handwriting traveled too far and returned sharpened. There's even a version where someone laughed too well, and the Sultan took offense because he himself had not. But what everyone agrees on is this. Someone laughed, and someone disappeared. And now, the garden waits. You reach the platform, stand in the middle. The wind moves through the leaves like a sigh that doesn't want credit. From somewhere behind the hedge, a gardener coughs once, then goes still. You sit on the edge of the platform, just to test the silence. And it holds. You think about trying a chuckle, just a small one, but it dies in your throat. Even your own humor doesn't want to be seen here. You notice something in the gravel, something misplaced. A ring. Thin, copper, worn smooth. You pick it up. Inside, a single line is scratched. Still funny, even now. You look around. No one is watching. But the air feels heavier. You place the ring in your pocket, carefully. Not like a thief, like a witness. At the far end of the garden stands an olive tree. Old, bent, leaning toward the wall like it's trying to escape politely. Beneath it, a stone bench. You walk toward it, slowly. As you do, you see faint lines etched into the tree's bark. Vertical, irregular, almost like tally marks. Some faded, some fresh. They say the gardeners didn't carve them. They say the tree does that on its own. You sit. From here you can see the whole garden. The symmetry, the control, the silence. And you understand something. This place isn't just quiet. It enforces quiet. You begin to rise. But then, a sound stops you. Not loud, not sharp, just a single note. A snort of laughter. You freeze. It came from the other side of the hedge, soft, choked, like someone losing a battle with a private joke. You wait. It doesn't come again. You walk toward the source, cautious. Turn the corner. No one's there. Just a half-folded napkin on the ground, and the faint scent of cinnamon. The sound of a dove rustling in a tree above makes you flinch harder than it should. You return to the arch. At the threshold, you glance back. Every flower faces the center of the garden, as if listening for the next mistake. You step out. The air outside feels thinner, easier. And behind you, the arch doesn't sigh. It just forgets. The steward who counted shadows, not people. You've entered the records wing now, but not the official one. Not the great hall with scrolls bound in crimson ribbon and scent marked by ministers. No, this corridor leads to a lesser room, an annex, really. Stone walls, dim lamps, and a single door with no label. Only a notch carved into the wood shaped like a candle leaning slightly left. You knock. No one answers. But the door opens anyway. Inside, a narrow chamber lit by a single wall lamp, burning low with almond oil. The shelves are lined not with scrolls or volumes, but with ledgers, each identical. Unmarked spines, brown covers, neat, unassuming. And at the center of the room, seated at a desk too short for his posture, is the steward. He does not look up. His pen moves. He writes with his left hand and sips tea with his right, without ever pausing. You clear your throat gently. He speaks, not looking at you. Please don't stand where the sixth shadow falls. It confuses the totals. You step slightly left. He nods once, approving. Now he looks at you. He's older than most palace staff. Not ancient, but tired in that way only mathematicians and spies become, worn from seeing too clearly, too long. Visitors? He asks. Unusual. Did someone lose a napkin again? You shake your head. He shrugs. Most do. He closes the ledger and sets it aside, reaches for another, then pauses. I suppose you're curious. Everyone eventually is. He opens a drawer and pulls out a sheet of translucent parchment. It's covered in shapes, not letters. Long columns of faint outlines filled with diagonal hash marks. Each figure is a person. These are my shadows, he says. He taps one gently. Palace Baker enters the west corridor at dawn, casts a long shadow toward the fig orchard, always alone. Another. Second in command of the guard, walks just before prayer call. His shadow flickers, means he hesitates often. You stare. You count people by shadows? He smiles faintly. People lie. Feet lie. Voices echo. He leans forward. But shadows obey light, and light doesn't know how to lie. He turns to the next page. These are not just shadows. They're patterns. He runs a finger across 6 rows. For example, this week, fewer long shadows in the northwest garden, which means someone important is avoiding the place, likely after what happened with the laughter. You nod slowly. He continues. Yesterday, I saw 3 shadows where there should have been 2. One belonged to a man, one to a servant. The third was perfectly still. He closes the ledger. Someone hiding behind someone else. He turns in his seat now, looking directly at you for the first time. I don't track people by their names. I track who they become when the sun hits them sideways. You glance at the shelves. Hundreds of ledgers. All shadows? You ask. He nods. From dusk to dawn, for 12 years. But why? He exhales. Because the court watches actions. The guards watch hands. But no one watches what follows people. He pours more tea from a clay kettle. Did you know the Sultan's own shadow always lags a little behind him? Just slightly. He sips. I suspect he walks faster than he means to. Or perhaps his robe lies heavier on him than he lets on. You say nothing. He reaches for a small book, thinner than the rest. Opens it. These are the shadows I've lost. The tone shifts. These are the ones that disappeared, without a person leaving. You frown. How is that possible? He taps the page. Sometimes, someone keeps walking, talking, breathing. But their shadow stops following. A pause. You see, when someone loses conviction, or loyalty, or even hope, their shadow notices first. He closes the book gently. You sit now across from him. A second chair. Bare wood. No cushion. But he doesn't offer comfort. He offers clarity. Do you ever report this to the palace? You ask. He smiles, almost kindly. They think I tally lantern oil. He points to a scroll marked Supplies, East Annex. I submit a report every week. No one reads it. because it's written in a code only I remember. You glance again at the notched lines, each one a record, a moment, a flicker of a truth no one else sees. I've seen shadows grow heavier before betrayals, he says, and lighter just before death. Sometimes they stretch, sometimes they curl. He stands slowly, points toward the door. Your shadow, just now, paused before you entered. That usually means doubt. You look back at the light behind you. Sure enough, your shadow falls slightly off-center. Not long, not short.
Just uncertain.
He returns to his desk. Leave when the sixth shadow reaches the shelf, he murmurs. Not before, not after. You wait. It takes 11 breaths. Then it shifts. You step through the door quietly. Outside, the sun has moved. The hallway feels unfamiliar. And behind you, the steward opens a fresh page. One more line. One more flicker of someone who once moved through the palace as if they were still whole. The room that locks itself. It's not on the map. Ask any steward and they'll deny its existence. Ask the scribe of architecture and he'll blink too long. Ask the astrologer and he'll smile, but won't answer. But the room is there. It's always been there. It just doesn't stay where you left it. You reach it after walking a corridor you've walked before, but something feels slightly off. The shadows stretch wrong. The torches burn quieter. The sound of your steps lags behind like your echo is second-guessing you. Then, suddenly, there it is. A door. Unpainted. Unadorned. No carvings. No handle. Just a single brass hinge, polished so perfectly it reflects your own face as if it doesn't recognize you. You place your hand gently on the wood. It opens. Not with a creak, but with a sigh, as if the room has been waiting. Inside, silence. Not emptiness, just absence. It isn't a large room, nor small, just precisely the size of whatever you need to forget. No windows, no lanterns. And yet, you can see, dimly, softly, as if the room generates its own quiet visibility, just enough to show you what's necessary, and no more. You step inside. The floor is tiled with dark stone, cool beneath your feet. The air smells faintly of ink and something older, like burnt parchment and dried figs. The door closes behind you, gently. No lock turns. But you know, it's locked. It always locks itself. That's what it does. It doesn't keep you out. It keeps you in, until it's finished with you. You walk slowly around the room. There are no books, no scrolls, no shelves. Just a single chair in the corner, and a mirror. But not a normal mirror. It reflects not what you are, but what you almost became. You stand before it. At first, nothing. Just the faint outline of your robe. Then, images. You see yourself turning left instead of right on a certain night. You see yourself refusing the Sultan's request. You see yourself confessing something you still hide. Then it fades. The mirror never lingers. You turn away. The chair, simple, wooden, worn, feels more like a listener than a seat. You sit. Nothing happens. And then, slowly, you begin to remember. Not because the room shows you, but because the room wants you to. You remember a name you were supposed to forget. You remember the scent of a scarf no longer in your possession. You remember a line from a poem that never made it to the archive. Some doors open forward. This one opens inward. You rise, a little unsteady. The room remains silent. But there is something in the walls now. A subtle hum. Not noise, more like presence. You place your hand against the wall. It feels like skin stretched over stone. Soft, ancient, expectant. Then, from the corner, you hear a whisper. Not loud, not even spoken, just intended. The ones who laughed too loudly, they stayed longer. You turn. No one's there. Of course not. But now, the mirror shows one word. Choose. You walk toward the door. You press against it. It does not budge. You try again. Still nothing. Then you remember what the astrologer once said. Some rooms are dreams pretending to be architecture. You sit again. This time, you let go. You let go of the question you've been carrying since the sixth shadow fell. You let go of the name you found etched in the bark. You let go of the ring in your pocket. And then, the door opens. You don't hear it. You just feel air shift across your shoulders. You rise, slower this time. Not reluctant, recalibrated. You step outside. The hallway is unfamiliar again. It always is. That's how the room ensures no one visits too often. Or maybe, that's how it ensures you forget how you left. Behind you, the door has vanished. Where it once stood, now only smooth wall. Not even dust remains. You walk on. And though you remember very little, your shadow follows a half-step closer now. The musician who played only for empty rooms. You hear him before you find him. Not loudly, not clearly. Just a tremble of string through air. Too soft to echo, too delicate to announce itself. The note curves gently around a corner of the palace few enter anymore. You follow it, like someone drawn by the scent of rain before the clouds come. The hallway narrows. The walls change. Paint peels in elegant strips. The windows are sealed with dust, and vines have crept inside where plaster once held fast. And then you reach it. A narrow wooden door, half open. Beyond it, a long room with high arches and no furniture, except a chair, a table, and him, the musician. He sits slightly hunched, tuning a bowed instrument with the patience of someone preparing not for performance, but for confession. The instrument is old, curved like a question. Its strings glint in the candlelight, which flickers but does not fail. He doesn't look up. He doesn't need to. He begins to play. It's not a song you recognize, but your breath slows anyway. The notes arrive like thoughts you almost remembered. Soft, crooked, precise. You take a seat on the edge of the platform, not close, not far. He continues. A few more notes, then pause, then begins again. The melody changes. More hesitant now. Less like performance, more like wandering. After a time, maybe minutes, maybe years, he stops. I don't like playing for people, he says without turning. People want meaning. Empty rooms just want music. You say nothing. He adjusts the pegs on the neck of the instrument. The wood creaks like it remembers older hands. They assigned me to the court orchestra once, he continues. Made me wear gold trim, bow to applause. He shakes his head. No one ever listened. They just waited for the music to stop. You ask why he plays here. He gestures around the room. I play where I'm not asked to explain. He rests the bow on his knee. This room has good memory, he says. It doesn't remember faces, but it remembers sound. He points to the far archway. A poet once read a line here that made 3 women cry. Years later, the walls still wept during the rains. He smiles faintly. I like rooms that keep secrets better than courtiers do. He begins tuning again. Each string sings for a moment, then submits. This instrument, he says, holding it up, was made from a walnut tree that grew alone in a graveyard. He lets that settle. People say it sounds mournful. I say it sounds accurate. You ask if he composes his own music. He nods. But only when I forget who I am. He sets the bow again. This next one, he murmurs, is for the woman who used to dance alone in the garden when no one was watching. He plays, and for a moment, you see her. In your mind, a shadow in pale silk, spinning beneath a fig tree, arms lifted like branches. The music is slow, then it stops, then starts again. Faster, angrier. This one's for the minister who stole coins meant for the orphanage. He plays 3 jarring notes, then silence. That one's finished, he says. He leans back. You ask how he chooses what to play each day. He glances at the corner of the room, where a cobweb glows in the candlelight. I ask the air, he says. If it sighs left, I play sorrow. If it sighs right, I play rage. If it holds its breath, I don't play at all. You ask if the Sultan has ever heard him. He shrugs. He passed by once, didn't stop. He looks at you now. Power rarely pauses for music.
Then he lifts the bow one final time.
This one, he says softly, is for those who forgot the sound of their own name. And he plays. No rhythm, no melody, just a series of notes that feel like waking up from a dream too beautiful to explain. When he finishes, the room feels heavier, not sad, just full. He sets the instrument down, stands, and without a word, walks to the far end of the room. A small door opens. He slips through and is gone. You are alone now, and yet the music lingers, not in your ears, but in the walls, in the air behind your ribs. You stand. Leave quietly. As you do, you notice something carved into the lintel of the doorway. A line of music. Just 5 notes. The last one hanging open, waiting to be played by whoever comes next. The archivist who refused to write anything down. Vanishing records, perfect memory, and a man trusted with everything because he trusted paper with nothing. You expect scrolls, you expect parchment, you expect shelves so tall they scrape the ceiling. Instead, you find a man sitting on the floor. No inkpot, no ledgers, no shelves, just him. Cross-legged, eyes closed, surrounded by nothing, and yet somehow holding everything. This is the personal memory chamber, buried beneath the central hall. The only room in the palace where pens are forbidden, where silence is not enforced, but expected. The archivist sits quietly, not because he's meditating, but because he's searching. You step closer. He opens his eyes. They are gray, not with age, but with storage, like clouds that have refused to rain. You're here, he says, not as a greeting, but as confirmation. He gestures to the cushion across from him. You sit. There are no windows. Only one lamp in the center of the ceiling, glowing dimly. You ask, where are the records? He blinks once. Inside, he says, tapping his chest. You ask if he stores everything from memory. He nods. But not just my memory. I carry the memories of 6 archivists before me. You say nothing. He closes his eyes again. I know, he says slowly, that the 3rd Sultan once ate only yellow foods for a month, convinced it would protect him from poison. A pause. I know the Queen's falconer stole coins to feed orphans, and the Queen let him. Quietly. Another pause. I know the minister's secret daughter is buried beneath the West Fountain, and that her name was inscribed in jasmine oil that fades with heat. You stare. But none of that is written. He opens his eyes. And that is exactly why it survived. He leans forward slightly. Paper forgets. It fades. It burns. It betrays. He taps his temple. But memory? Memory resists fire. You ask how he remembers so much. He smiles. You mistake this for a burden. He closes his eyes again. I remember because no one else will. Because someone must carry what doesn't belong in scrolls. You glance around again. The room is still empty, but you begin to notice the floor is etched. Not writing, patterns, small curves, ticks, echoes, memory paths. He used to hum, the archivist says suddenly. You blink. Who? The boy with the golden earring. He died during the flood 6 summers ago. He hummed while sorting quills.
You pause.
Why do you remember him? Because no one else will. He continues. I remember the laughter in the kitchen when the new spices arrived. The weeping in the stairwell the day the Sultan's sister left. I remember the silence that followed the 3rd failed rebellion. He leans back now. You ask softly, why not write any of it down? He opens his eyes fully. Because written truth becomes owned. Spoken truth becomes blamed. But remembered truth? He shrugs. It waits. Patiently, without demanding to be believed. You ask if anyone else knows what he knows. He shakes his head. Only the garden raven. You tilt your head. He visits sometimes, sits near the lamp. Never speaks. But he remembers too. He closes his eyes again. This week, he murmurs, a servant lied to save another. A cook threw away a letter. A child hid beneath the staircase and learned who really rules this place. You watch him fall into silence. It is not meditation. It is filing. You ask him, what happens if something happens to you? He opens his eyes, calm. Then it disappears, like a candle extinguished by wind. And if it was worth remembering, he taps the floor gently. It will return. Somewhere. In someone else. You nod slowly. He reaches into a small cloth pouch, pulls out a single date. Soft. Wrinkled. Take it, he says. You hesitate. It has nothing to do with memory, he adds. It's just sweet, and you look like someone who forgets to eat when they're curious. You take it. Chew slowly. It's the best thing you've tasted all day. You rise. He doesn't. The lamp flickers once as you reach the door. Then he speaks again. One last thing. You turn. I don't record everything, he says. Some things I choose not to remember. You ask, like what? He smiles sadly. Names spoken in hatred. crimes that were forgiven, and the last words of people who didn't mean them.
He closes his eyes.
And forgets you.
You leave quietly.
Outside, the hallway seems louder now, and your footsteps heavier. But somewhere, deep behind the door, a single man sits, remembering not just history, but why it was never written. The cupbearer who served the poison, first to himself. Silver cups, invisible poisons, and a man who tasted loyalty every day of his life. There are no guards outside his door, no servants, no crowd of officials, just a small copper plate on the wall that reads, Tastings. You knock. The door opens almost immediately. The man who stands before you is neither young nor old, not rich nor poor in appearance, not handsome, not plain. He is exactly as expected, which is strange, because you didn't expect anything specific. He bows his head gently. Come in, he says, with the calm of someone who measures time in drops, not hours. Inside, the room is spare, clean. A low marble table holds 3 cups. 1 silver, 1 jade, 1 wood. None are labeled. Each is filled with a different liquid. He gestures for you to sit. Today's tea is infused with cardamom and dried basil, he says, then points to the silver cup. This one may kill me. You pause. He lifts the cup, smells it, swirls it, then drinks. A full sip. You watch him. He closes his eyes, breathes once, twice, then nods. This one is safe, he says. You ask, why do you drink it first? He smiles faintly. That's the job. He sets the cup down carefully. But it's more than duty. It's philosophy. He gestures at the jade cup. This one's for taste only. Lemon peel, steeped in water. Bitter, but alive. Then the wooden one. This one was sent by a merchant, unverified. I will test it at nightfall. If I live, the Sultan will drink it tomorrow. You glance at the cups again, all identical in portion, all mysterious in origin. You ask, have you ever tasted poison? He nods. Several times, apparently. But only once did it surprise me, he says. It was in honeyed milk. The poison tasted like cinnamon.
He smiles again, this time wryly.
Too pleasant. Almost made me forgive it. You ask what happened. I collapsed before I could warn the kitchen. They served it to the general. He pauses. He died. I did not. You blink. How? He taps his chest. Trained for it. Built for it. He pours a small amount of rose water into a shallow dish. I take herbs, spices, counteragents. I prepare my body like others prepare reports. Then he leans in, serious now. But none of that matters if I ever become careless. One slip, one distraction, and the cup sings its own song. He lifts a small piece of bread from a tray, tears it, dips it in the 3rd cup, sniffs it, pauses, then puts it aside. Too early, he says softly, still hiding. You ask, do you trust anyone here? He laughs, not cruelly, but gently, like someone who's heard the question from 100 mouths. I trust the cup. It never lies. Its contents might. But the cup itself? Honest, cold, empty when needed. You glance at the shelves behind him. There are dozens of cups, no two alike. He sees you looking. Each cup, he says, was last used on a day something changed.
He points to a black cup rimmed with ivory.
This one was used when the queen forgave her sister. Another, blue ceramic, chipped at the edge. This one was used when the royal falcon died. You ask, why keep them? He pauses. To remember what almost happened. You nod slowly. He takes another sip from the silver cup, then speaks again. I'm not loyal to the Sultan, he says plainly. I'm loyal to the delay, the moment between sip and consequence. He holds up the cup. That moment, that's mine. I guard it. I give it space to exist, to warn, to listen. You ask, and if one day you don't survive? He shrugs. Then I will have served the only way I ever meant to. He picks up the wooden cup now. It trembles slightly in his hand. He breathes in, waits, and drinks. Just one sip. Silence. You both wait. Longer than before. He finally exhales and smiles. Coriander. Faint trace of copper, but safe. He marks something in a small leather journal. Tomorrow, he says, this will be offered to the Sultan. But first, I will drink it again. And again. You rise to leave. At the doorway, you ask, why do you keep doing it? He doesn't answer at first. Then softly,
Because someone has to believe that the first taste of danger
should not belong to power. You leave. Behind you, 3 cups remain, but only one contains the man himself. Poured daily, measured carefully, and offered without hesitation. The girl who was raised by maps, not people. Forgotten provinces, folded paper dreams, and a mind shaped by borders instead of lullabies. You've left the kitchens behind, passed through the lantern hall, climbed a staircase most believe leads only to archives. But tucked in a quiet alcove, behind a velvet curtain frayed at the bottom, is a door. Faintly painted on it, a compass rose. But the cardinal directions are wrong. North is where west should be. You push it open. The room inside is covered in maps. Not hung, not rolled. Laid on tables, on walls, across the floor, even over the ceiling. Some are centuries old. Some still smell like fresh parchment. Some are burned at the edges, others unfinished. And in the middle of it all, a girl. Or rather, not a girl now. She's older than her frame suggests. Not quite child, not quite adult. But her eyes, sharp, scanning, perpetually calculating, have the age of someone who's lived in distances, not years. She doesn't look up when you enter. Instead, she's tracing a mountain range with the tip of a feather. You clear your throat softly. She speaks without turning. You're standing on the capital of a forgotten empire. Please don't smudge it. You step carefully to the side. She gestures toward a low stool. You sit. She still doesn't look at you. Instead, she asks, do you know what the river Avedon looked like before the flood redirected it? You shake your head. She finally turns, smiles faintly. Most don't, but the maps remember. She reaches for a roll of pale linen, unfurls it gently. There it is, an entire province, erased from the official records after the 3rd drought, preserved here in soft ink. This, she says, is the only place it still exists. You ask her name. She tilts her head. I was given one, but I prefer coordinates. You blink. Coordinates? She points to a corner of the ceiling.
Latitude 12°9, longitude 48°3. It's where I first felt real.
You follow her gaze.
A small island, drawn on a navy blue map, surrounded by symbols for wind, wave, and warning. You ask who raised her.
She shrugs.
The cartographer and the janitor. He didn't speak much, but he showed me how to flatten paper without tearing it. She moves to another table, laid out here. A map of the palace, but not the current version.
This one includes rooms that no longer exist. You see one labeled the Listening Staircase.
Another, Echo Garden, closed after whispering incident.
You point. These aren't in the official plans.
She grins. That's because the official plans were corrected. I keep the truth. You ask why she maps things no one asks for. She looks suddenly serious.
Because if you don't record where something was, you'll never notice when it's been moved.
You nod slowly.
She walks over to a corner of the room where several maps are stacked. This one, she says, lifting a torn parchment, shows trade routes the palace denied existed.
But the spices always arrived a day too early.
This map explains why. She unrolls it. A path through a salt desert,
Labeled only Path of Smugglers, but polite ones.
You ask if anyone else uses her maps.
She shrugs again.
Sometimes the queen borrows one. The cook used one once to find his grandmother's village. The steward of shadows sends me notes. But mostly, I make them for the ones who will come after.
She walks over to a small cabinet, opens it. Inside, dozens of tiny scrolls.
Each labeled with a date, a weather condition, and a feeling.
Emotional cartography, she explains.
Mapping how people felt in places they no longer visit.
She pulls one.
Storm, quiet, regret.
Unrolls it. A single hallway. Drawn not in scale, but in mood.
You ask how she learned to do this.
I grew up with no mother, she says softly.
No songs, no stories. Only roads
And rivers.
and guesses. She moves to a corner where a canvas sheet is pinned to the floor.
On it, a room shaped like a question mark. You recognize it.
It's the one that locked itself. You ask how she mapped it.
I waited,
She says.
Waited for it to appear again.
And when it did, I didn't enter. I walked around it, took its measure, listened to how the walls breathed. She taps the corner with a charcoal mark. This spot. This is where people hesitate. She draws a small spiral there.
That means memory,
Or danger, or both. She finally looks at you fully now, and you realize she's never left this room. Not really. Her body, maybe, but not her mind. She gestures toward a large blank sheet pinned to the far wall. That's the one I haven't drawn yet. You ask why. Because it's the map of the future, and I only draw that one once I know where you're going. You smile. She smiles back, just a little. Would you like to be a coastline? She asks. They last longer than rivers. You nod. She reaches for her quill
and begins to draw. Not a likeness of you,
but a possibility. You watch. And for a moment, you feel as though you've always existed on paper,
waiting to be discovered.
the wall that only reflected people when they lied, stone, secrets, and the strange silence of a palace mirror that refused truth. They called it a wall, but it wasn't made of stone, not wood, not iron, just polished obsidian, flat, silent, seamless. It stood near the old council chambers, behind a curtain of faded crimson. No plaque, no guards, only the hush of rumor and the creak of floorboards older than most dynasties. You walk slowly toward it now. There's no light, and yet, somehow, you can see. Not clearly, not like a regular mirror. But enough. Enough to notice that your reflection is missing. You step closer. Still nothing. But then, a flicker. Your face, faintly, briefly, appears just as you blink. And then it's gone again. A whisper behind you. You turn. No one. Just a cold draft. And the feeling that something has just weighed you. Not judged, not condemned, just measured. They say the wall was made from obsidian quarried during the eclipse of a year that never made it into official calendars. That it was polished by monks who never spoke. That its surface remembers lies better than faces. According to palace records, it was decorative. According to servants, it was cursed. According to the gardener's apprentice, it knows when you're pretending. You step even closer. This time, you speak. I was invited here. No reflection. You pause. Try again. I'm here to learn. A shimmer. Not quite your face, but your shape. You test it. I am a trusted guest of the Sultan. Nothing. You try again. I was not afraid when I entered the cupbearer's room. And suddenly, there you are, perfectly reflected. But your face looks slightly off. Not older, not younger, just less certain. The image holds for 3 seconds, then vanishes. You remember what the musician said once, when passing near this chamber. That wall never speaks, but it always answers. You sit cross-legged before it, quiet, still. It is not a beautiful surface, not graceful, not smooth. There are small imperfections, places where lies must have cracked its memory, hairline fractures where someone must have shouted a falsehood too loudly, scorched edges where shame lived too long. You whisper something, a confession maybe, and the wall doesn't flicker, doesn't glow. But you feel something heavy lift. You ask, does it only reflect lies? A voice, not yours, answers, but only in your mind. No, it reflects the part of you that doesn't believe your truth. You don't know if the voice is imagined, or remembered, or the wall itself, but it makes sense. You recall the court poet once said, "We do not fear lies. We fear being believed before we're ready to mean it." You rise slowly. The obsidian wall shimmers again. This time it shows not you, but someone else. A child. Alone. Hiding a ribbon behind her back. She speaks. But you can't hear. The image fades. Then another. A young man, speaking to a window, declaring he would never betray his brother. He did. The wall remembers. Another image. An old queen, whispering a name she pretended to forget for 40 years. The wall holds the secret. Not cruelly, not proudly, just consistently. You reach out your hand. The surface is cold, but not lifeless. It feels like stone that once listened. You lean closer. Ask a final question. What lie am I still telling myself? The wall does not answer in words, only light, a flicker, a shimmer. And then,
You see a version of yourself.
not older, not younger, but
free, standing tall, not hiding, not pretending. And then the image fades. You leave the chamber quietly. Behind you, the wall waits again, not for you, but for the next unsteady sentence, for the next untested oath,
For the next person who dares to speak aloud.
hoping not to be reflected. The palace garden, where nothing ever died. Eternal vines, whispering leaves, and the one gardener who knew when not to water. You notice it by scent before sight. Not perfume, not spice, but something deeper, like warm stone after rain, or the breath of old trees. The garden is tucked behind the east wing. No official entrance, just a vine-covered archway that pulls open when you press the right stone. You step through. The light changes instantly, softer, greener, not dim, but filtered, as though the sun has agreed to be gentle here. Everything is alive. The trees bear fruit, and yet none ever fall. The roses bloom wide, even in winter. Vines twirl around columns and statues, but never strangle. And the strangest part? Nothing decays. No dead leaves. No wilting petals. No rot. The ground is soft, but never muddy. The air is fragrant, but never overwhelming. And despite the thick growth, not a single weed in sight. A small path winds through. You follow it. Slowly, like walking through someone's dream. Near the center is a low marble bench, and beside it, the gardener. She's older than anyone else you've met in this place, but not weak. She trims a vine with deliberate care, not with shears, just her fingernails. She doesn't look up when you approach. Step lightly, she says without turning. The ground here remembers footsteps. You pause, step off the path, onto the moss. It feels like walking on memory. She finally turns. Her eyes are gray, rimmed with soil, her hands scarred with love. Did someone send you? She asks. You shake your head. She smiles faintly. Good. The plants prefer surprise. She gestures to a tree with silver-tipped leaves. This fig tree bore its first fruit during the third sultan's coronation, then to a patch of ivy. This one only grows near people who've broken promises. You look down. The ivy curls slightly toward your boot. You cough. She laughs softly. Don't worry. It doesn't judge. It just listens. You ask why nothing dies here. She sighs. They do die. They just don't leave. You tilt your head. She explains. When something passes here, a leaf, a root, a flower, it doesn't decay. It becomes part of something else. She walks over to a pond so still it looks like glass. Points to a lily floating atop. That lily was once a plum tree, fell during a storm 80 years ago. She kneels, runs her hand through the water. Everything returns. Nothing disappears. You ask if that's magic. She shrugs. No more than breathing or growing old. She plucks a flower and hands it to you. The petals shimmer faintly, like they remember being something else. Smell it. You do. It smells like a hallway you once walked, a scarf you once wore, a word you almost spoke. You blink. She nods. They carry fragments. You sit beside her on the bench. Ask if the garden is dangerous. Only if you're afraid of remembering, she says. You notice a corner of the garden filled with color, flowers arranged in spirals.
You ask about it. She says, "That's the section for unspoken apologies. People come here, even secretly. They whisper what they wish they'd said." You rise and walk toward it. There's no plaque, just a breeze, and a quiet rustling, like the garden is curious. You whisper something, not loud, not clear, just enough. The wind shifts. The spiral of flowers turns slightly, like it's nodding. You return. The gardener is watching a vine crawl slowly across a wall. You ask how long she's tended this place. Since before the floods, before the fifth archive burned, before the raven learned to mimic the Sultan's voice. You laugh. She smiles.
This place doesn't need much, she says.
Mostly it just needs someone who knows when not to interfere. You ask what happens if someone cuts the plants or tries to take them. She touches her chest. They carry the scent of their absence forever. Then adds softly, "Some regrets bloom louder than flowers." You look around again. Everything here is beautiful, but not perfect. The trees twist in strange ways. Some vines refuse to climb. One rose bush grows upside down, but it all works. Not because it's controlled, but because it's allowed to remember itself. As you prepare to leave, she hands you a seed. Small, black, warm.
It only grows once, she says.
But when it does, it remembers you. You step back through the archway. The air feels heavier. The light, brighter. And in your palm, a seed pulses gently, waiting. Not for soil, but for the right memory. The final door that opens only once. One breath, one lock, and the choice no one talks about until it's time to choose. You find it at the far end of a hallway that doesn't appear on any map, not even the girls. It exists between two shadows, near a lantern that never quite lights the floor. There is no knob, no keyhole, only a smooth bronze surface, warm to the touch. Etched into the metal, a single sentence, in a language you almost understand. You run your fingers along the curve of the words. They resist slightly, like they know you're not quite ready. You look behind you. The hallway is still there, but fainter now, quieter. The palace has many secrets, but only one door like this, and everyone knows its name, though few admit it aloud. The final door. It is not an exit, not an escape, not a reward. It is a choice. No one is told when they'll reach it. No one is forced to open it. But once you do, it never closes. Not for you. Not again. You sit across from it. There's a low bench of marble shaped like a sigh. You've heard the legends. Some say behind it lies a garden where all things lost are found. Others say it leads to a room with a single mirror that shows the moment you almost changed and didn't. One version says it opens onto the first memory you ever forgot. Another claims it shows you the life you would have lived had you turned left instead of right, said yes instead of no, forgiven instead of stayed silent. But the truth? No one knows, because those who enter do not return. Not out of cruelty, not out of punishment, but because the door opens only once. And once you walk through, you are no longer someone who waits. You stare at it. You think of everything you've seen: the cupbearer, the map girl, the musician, the archivist, the garden, the wall, each holding a secret, each holding a truth. And now, all those truths sit in your chest, humming like a locked box. You place your hand on the bronze,
It pulses gently, like a heartbeat. The surface warms, not in welcome, but in recognition. You speak softly. I'm not ready. The door does not move, does not judge. You wait. Stillness, and then a soft hiss, like a breath being released after years of holding it in. A seam appears, thin, vertical, just enough for light to leak through. You step back. The air smells familiar, like childhood, like rain, like a song you forgot but know all the words to. Inside the seam, nothing. No shapes, no sounds, just light, soft, and patient. You ask, what happens if I don't go in? A voice, not heard, but felt, responds. Then the door remains here, waiting for someone who might be you. You ask, and if I do? The voice hums. Then you remember who you've always been, beneath the questions, beneath the waiting. You step closer. The light warms your skin, not like the sun, more like memory. And here, finally, you realize the door doesn't lead forward or backward. It leads inward. It opens not into a place, but into a part of you that has never been touched by time. You breathe in. A second, a moment, a forever. You exhale and choose. Whether you enter or not, the door remains, not because it's stubborn, not because it's sacred, but because some things in this world are meant to open only once, and only for those who've seen enough to know what still matters. You turn away, or maybe you step through. Either way, the story ends here, but the memory remains, and that was always the point.